Welcome to Le Corner, La Source's digital show dedicated to the sport and entertainment industry. Every 2 weeks, we invite a professional to share their experience, background, and challenges. The sport industry moves fast, and having their insights is the best way to keep up to speed. Welcome to Le Corner.
Hey Chris, it's a pleasure to be with you. Welcome to a new episode of Le Corner. How are you doing?
Likewise, very good. Thanks, JB. Doing good. Thanks a lot. How are you?
Yeah, I'm feeling quite pumped today. Sunny weather outside. February vibes. It's okay.
Nah, lucky one. I assume you're in the south. I mean, Berlin is a bit colder, and most of Germany's groundsmen are suffering these days. But I'm also very positive. Probably also because for once I'm 1 week in the office, which feels good.
Yeah. Nothing beats Berlin, mate. So Chris, just before we jump in and you explain us a little bit your company, what you do at turfcoach, and how you've been working for the past months, we usually like to start with a short description of yourself. Like, for the listeners, can you tell us a bit who you are, a bit of intro on you?
Yeah, sure. I'm Christian. I'm a 32-year-old founder of turfcoach. I started this company or this project around 3 years ago, a bit more over 3 years. And my background is very diverse, meaning I've on the one hand worked in several disciplines, but I also grew up across the world. Coming from a background where my parents were diplomats, meaning I was born in South America. I finished school in Barcelona, so Spain and Spanish-speaking countries are very close to my heart, even though I very much look like a German. For every one of you who doesn't have visuals in front of me, I'm probably a prototype of German looking. And
very tall, very tall as well. Very tall.
Sadly slim, I have to admit that. Yeah, and not as strong as I hope I would look like at 32 when I was 22, but still up and going. And studied in England, and then I worked at the UN in Chile. And that was the first time, or after my studies, basically, where I actually actively engaged in, let's say, land use and plant management. And, well, of course, being in the UN from a perspective more of policies, but particularly with this focus of digitalization and sustainability as two core points. And, and of course, how climate change affects everything. Yeah.
Okay. So you were an engineer. I mean, son of a diplomat. Speaking various languages, and I've seen it in action, which is terrific for a founder of a company to expand in different markets. But so son of diplomats, engineers, moved after first careers in the UN.
Exactly.
So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Then, I mean, but what happened basically is that given that I'm now a founder, I'm probably at the other extreme of what the UN is like. Yeah, so I'm in zero bureaucracy.
Is it because you've worked at the UN that you wanted to, or?
No, I definitely. I mean, the UN was like a zero impact place, even though, of course, you try to have impact, but factually speaking, your day's work was not really like you felt that you could have an impact anytime soon. And being a founder is daily impact, which can also be terrifying because if you do something bad, you will definitely see the mistake at the end of the day. But I guess that's part of life.
Okay.
I enjoy it very much.
You've been enjoying the entrepreneur or founder journey more than the kind of relax and sit back UN
lifestyle. Yeah, of course. Yeah. What happened is that basically I was at the UN for 2 years, and then I transferred came back to Europe and started working with the company of a friend of mine who was in the agtech space. So I had interviewed him back in the days in Chile, because he was an agtech from Chile, but he had expanded by now to Europe. And he was pretty much specialized on sensors, weather station, and software for farmers in fruit farms, particularly avocados, but also berries. So high yielding crops. high value crops. And, that was for me the inspiration, because I worked with him for almost 3 years. And at some point, when he saw this company, I asked myself, well, isn't there the opportunity for me to do something similar and combine it with a passion of mine, which is sports? Yeah. And I was.
But you have a background in agriculture too, or tell us,
yes,
because it's important, I think, to understand.
Partially yes, partially no. So I would say in my bachelor's I didn't do agriculture. Yeah, what I did is I did business and economics, and then my master's I studied what is so-called development studies, which is very broad. And in that sphere, I entered into agriculture, and under that view, yeah. So you get a different. It's not agriculture as biology, which probably I would love to study now, yeah, if I had have more time. But it's more agriculture as in, okay, there's certain structures in place, yeah. Fertilization companies, chemical companies, bigger companies. There's smallhold farmers, which nurture a lot of the humanity until today. There's different kinds of agriculture, yeah. So there's animal agriculture. There's most of the agriculture, which is essentially to grow food for those animals which we eat, yeah. And then there is farmers of fruit farmers, yeah, berry farmers, agriculture, and yeah, different styles, yeah. And you kind of start getting into this world, and you start realizing that, yeah, a lot of the land use which we have around us, be it in the city, but more, of course, if you go out into the landscape, is there to nurture and feed everyone who's living in the city. And how we have this nurture, we have this nature urban divide, yeah. And a rural urban divide, that's called in the scientific term. So that was one of the topics you talk about. And that's how we got into it.
I know turf coaching, we'll discuss it, but it's a turf data software solution. How come? Okay, there is maybe the co-founders as well, working in the agri space and with the sensors that can also give you the hint or the clue or the model
transition
for that. Yeah, the transition. But for me, it's how did you? Was it your past experience as a professional where you say, okay, the UN is like zero impact, and there I'm in a company where it's applied in one sector, but I want to bring it to my passion. Okay, let's go. Like, how did it turn out?
I would rather say, look, I had been working, I'm still an enthusiast of trying to, let's say, bridge the divide between humanity and nature, in the sense of letting us understand better how plants function, yeah, and take better care of plants and landscapes, yeah. And in that context, I was looking for an opportunity where humans take very intensive care of plants, yeah. And now I knew that the agriculture industry was one industry, but I knew that there would be because it's very difficult to mimic a plant and to even build a microclimate, understand a microclimate. So my intention was to say, okay, let's look at kind of a plant which is very controlled, yeah, for certain reasons, yeah, whether it's to give us food or because we play sports on it. And then it was the other hand to say, okay, let's look at a microclimate that we can actually model, a plant that we can model. Because if you start having, let's say you want to try to model apples, right? You have apple varieties which are ripe in May and others which are ripe in October. So it's going to be extremely difficult because you would have to model each one of these seeds, yeah? Whereas if we talk about turf, and not only being an extremely extensive plant which humans have in their lawns, but we play football on and rugby on and cricket, etc. But it's also that there's certainly different varieties of soil, yeah, but there's mainly 4 or 5 species which we use to play at least football on, yeah. And the initial idea, while I was working with ideas, basically my initial thought was, well, let's see where there's demand, where there are people who are actually looking for support and help. And that actually brought me then to start Turf Coach, because I remember I had the deck of my friend's company, so a presentation. I changed the logo to mine, and I just wrote a few football clubs in Germany, yeah, a short email to info at, and was like, hey, it would be nice if you could forward to your grounds managers department. And next thing I know, I wake up on Friday, I have a call super early in the morning, 7:30. And I was like, okay, who called me at 7:30? I had another email who'd written me and was like, call back. And by the end of the day, all 4 clubs that I'd contacted had come back to me, and I talked with 3 groundsmen, and I just learned a lot about their difficulties, their challenges, and basically on a day-to-day pressures, having every coach complain potentially about you. Definitely players complain if they lose, and basically having this difficulty of providing a sublime surface for the most beautiful game of the world,
with objective data, or with objective information on saying the pitch was good, man.
Yeah, exactly. They need to have something which defends them, because they themselves, if it was only their opinion, it was often their opinion against the opinion of a coach who had probably 50 or 100 times their salary. Yeah. So where was the support system for them? And I realized they really need this support system. I would say the absolute experts, they know what to do on a day-to-day, but if they go into holidays, already the team might get into trouble. And second of all, if there's a coach which is in a bad mood, or a player which got injured, they need to sit down and justify themselves. And if you start having data, that's a big support. And when I went to there to see what kind of, let's say, solutions have been built in the space, but also what kind of daily challenges they have, from optimizing watering to how and when to fertilize, disease management, I just realized, okay, wow, there's a big need here to actually create digital tools which are very well designed. So I'm talking about UI UX also,
Yeah.
Because if you just come up with a solution, I mean, anyone can give you an Excel and be my guest and spend 5 hours a day and typing in what you did, but that's a huge pain. And that's why most groundsmen and groundswomen until today don't use software, because it's a pain.
Yeah,
but if you come up with something simple and help them, well, they might be actually very grateful. And to be honest, from what my experience has been ever since I started this, is I've encountered an extremely open, extremely nice and supportive community of groundsmen across the globe that are particularly supportive in moments of distress and moments of hardship and difficulties, because you might want to be able to control everything, but the weather we definitely cannot control. And hence groundsmen are always out exposed to this variability, and which I want to kind of just be one more part in the tool set to support.
In helping them. Okay. Really, Chris, I love it, because for me, it's like you've proved the product market fit to a certain extent with 4 emails. Like you just send that, you have like 100% response in less than 24 hours. That's something. And then you start collecting or refining the needs. So, if we deep dive a little bit more in turfcoach, that I know personally, but I think most of the listeners don't necessarily. So can you explain a bit what the company does? You also mentioned the different gaps. So I know there's a sustainability play here, because that's something, the bridge with the nature that you were mentioning, and that's also core to the value proposition of turfcoach. But if you can, explain what the company does and a bit the different gaps that you see on the market that you want to fill in.
Sure. Yes. So, I mean, what turfcoach does is it created until today a software which is very easy to use, and it's currently focused mainly on groundsmen. Yeah. And what it does, it collects all data sources which are relevant to groundsmen on the pitch. Yeah. Whether it's weather data, whether it's pitch usage data, but whether it's data from the irrigation system, from the undersoil heating system, from the grow lights, from all these different tools which a groundsman uses.
So you aggregate all of that into one place.
Yeah, we aggregate all of that into one place. And then what we offer you is intelligence, let's say smart support, which can come from most basic things such as, hey, there's a high disease risk, or you have a game in 2 hours and you haven't drawn the line in the last 48 hours. So maybe draw the lines again, down to a predictive control system of your undersoil heating, knowing that tomorrow it will be sunny and that you therefore can regulate it down. Yeah. So essentially the idea here is, or also an example, to aerate certain areas which are more compacted.
Okay.
But the idea is to have a system which is simple.
It's both simple task for daily operations or management in terms of irrigating or drawing the lines or stuff like that, but it can be more complex or a bit more predictive when it comes to weather forecast or to you mentioned high disease impact potentially or things like that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would say it makes it easy to collect all of the maintenance information and to schedule your day to day. But in this scheduling activity, we offer you the intelligence of science. Yeah. How? By looking at what has been happening in the past and what will come up in the future and give you advice and support. Yeah. And
so the daily user are the groundsmen. So meaning they use it for their, like at an academy in a federation or a club or anything for youth elites or for A team, B team. They just use it. They know the different pitches. They know what have been the activities over the past, I don't know, months, whatever, since they started to use the solution. And then it just helped them on their day-to-day operations.
Exactly. And that might sound simpler, but let me give you an example. Yeah. So there's something which groundsmen apply, which product name is Primo, but essentially what it is growth regulator, right? So when you want to know when you have to apply growth regulator again, essentially what you need to do is calculate the growing degree days, it's called, or growth potential, then call it as you might like. Essentially, it's a calculation where the question is, how many hours have there been with a certain temperature above X? And if you want to calculate this right now, you would expect the groundsman to sit down at the end of the day, do this mathematical calculation every day, write down the numbers, and then know exactly when he has reached number X after somewhat potentially 20 to 30 days, and then apply again. But every day, right? I mean, grass doesn't know holidays. So forget your weekend concept where you're stopping to work because the groundsman is working in theory. Yeah, forget the idea of the groundsman going into holidays. So what essentially happens is that groundsmen, if they don't have a digital tool support, they are sometimes the go-to person 7 days a week. Particularly if we're talking about football clubs, or soccer clubs, as they call it in the US, where every weekend you have a game, right? And sometimes twice a week. Yeah. So these support tools are a simple way of helping the groundsman, but on the same time, it takes it a step further because if we know what maintenance you did, if we know what the weather was like, and then you, for example, have a disease, what we can say is we can look back in time and say, okay, well, let's take a look. What has happened here? What were your management activities? What was the sunlight or sun hours, which were on this area of the pitch? Yeah. And what kind of disease did you have? Let's compare that to the prediction model. How's the prediction model set up? And there is when you can start closing the loop of circling and creating actually what we call the AI part, which is really understanding what has happened. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it because it's also something where, with my background at UEFA or discussing with other rights holders like FIFA or leagues, it's I remember like turf assessment to a certain extent. It's also something which is a bit complicated because you have to fly over people, then they go and they take like 6 or 18 holes, it depends, a bit everywhere on the pitch. They have these kind of carrots and they tell you like, okay, the pitch is, I don't know, grading 8 out of 10 or whatever the grades at the end of the day, or 4 out of 5. But the reality is that it's the pitch at one point when you are drawing the carrots and like maybe 2 weeks prior to a game or 1 month. Sometimes it could be 2 days, but it's nothing which is live and kind of easy and directly putting all the data together. So, that's something also I see for you, huh?
Of course, yes. I mean, this angle, what you're explaining, I mean, I've talked a lot about the, let's say, weather and agronomic side, because, well, you put me up on that at the beginning. But obviously, essentially the surface is the playing condition, it's the playing surface, right? It's the fundamental of the game, which means that the surface influences your movement pattern. Surface can influence your ball roll speed. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that how that movement of the players, ball roll, ball bounce, different kind of behaviors, can all be influenced. And then if you add on top of that the weather, right? So if we know that, for example, I don't know, tomorrow huge storm is predicted and rains of over a liter, per square meter. Well, there you go. Groundsmen need to know that and need to act accordingly in advance, and need to know that this weather prediction is the right one for their stadium or their training grounds, and not for the weather station, which is 5 kilometers away at the airport, and doesn't tell them anything about their weather, And most of the groundsmen, they have a good idea of this, but it seems that this communication between the groundsman and the training staff and the medical staff somehow, and the players also, really can still be strengthened with data. So I'll give you an example. If we know that the pitch is in certain conditions before a game, the question is for a player, am I going to wear my soft ground shoes? Or am I going to go with firm ground shoes? Or am I going to go with an intermediate? And if I used to have an ACL injury, maybe I should be thinking about a whole different shoe, which has less rotational traction. Now, right now, you might be able to look at a shoe and be able to give a standardized opinion, of what the traction behavior is of that shoe. But where is this standardized value on the pitch conditions? Because first of all, what we want to know is the pitch uniform, right? And 18 data points on a pitch, collected, as you said, at certain day X, can be completely different than the pitch conditions on the day just before the game, because certain maintenance activity took place, or certain machines went over, or classical headache of a groundsman. Oh yeah, they decided to do 10 times the opening ceremony for the World Cup game, and next thing you know, the pitch was in completely different conditions, because it was got compacted. But we want to say, hey, let's have a tool to measure this, So on the one hand,
how many data points do you have, Chris, on that?
If you only look at how we scan over a surface, where we measure soil moisture and surface hardness, we collect only from that source 18,000 data points.
More than 18,000. Okay.
Yeah. And if you can lay over that a shade analysis, the irrigation map, the maintenance activity that took place, data points are not relevant, but what's relevant then is how well do I actually understand each square meter of the pitch?
So when you are passing on the pitch with your scanner, like cutting the grass or whatever, doing activity, you collect all these data points, and then you add on the feeds an API for the weather, for the irrigations, for whatever. And so then becomes the beauty of the tool. Okay.
Exactly. And you start modeling, right? So let's say I scan the entire pitch on its soil moisture level. I know how shade falls onto your pitch and how your irrigators are distributed. And then I see certain patterns, and maybe you're able to optimize irrigation afterwards, because you can say, okay, maybe these heads should be on for less time, and the others for more time. Just a simple example.
What you said just before is interesting, because you, at the beginning, saying like the groundsman sometimes, it's a 24/7 job. You have no holiday because the pitch doesn't have any holiday, and at the same time, it's like if there is something going wrong, it's not like pointing the finger at them, but clearly they are one of the potential reasons why it turned bad. And so the coach can go after them. Some players can go after them.
Indeed.
The thing is with this, it's how have you seen also maybe helping the groundsmen to come to the sports performance side? So being the players or being the staff, the medical staff, to reduce the risk of injuries while training or the day before or for the game itself, or changing the tactics or whatever. Like, have you seen this kind of groundsman being a bit more maybe proactive and more of a friend or an ally to the sports performance team?
Yes, indeed. I think I see it wherever the groundsman has a certain, let's say, backing, from the sporting side. So there's different ways how you see a groundsman positioned. There's certain clubs which have external companies providing a service, and they kind of think, why should I care anything anymore about?
So they outsource, like they
outsource it completely, Okay. And they have a company. The company obviously consists of people which are doing this service, but there's no real data transported, right? There's no real interaction as in how to use this as a competitive advantage. Now, a different example, to say, for example, a club in Germany, in the Eastern region, which plays Champions League, which we work with, they have their groundsman straight in the under the sporting director on that side. Yeah. In the logic, which means that the groundsman is consulted before a game as to which shoes he thinks he would recommend, how the pitch will behave on that day. Yeah. And he flies in when they go, for example, abroad to train in other countries. He flies with them, makes sure that the pitch is in optimal conditions, because this communication has been established. Yeah. I've also seen other opportunities where I also think that a groundsman is very empowered, whereas when he's under direct support with the CFO. Yeah. Because what happens there is that often the financial view at the club or at the pitch, at the grounds,
is to reduce the cost.
Yeah, is to reduce the cost on the one hand, but also often has understood that the football pitch is essentially the office of a football player, right? And if you want to ensure and minimize the injury risk, knowing that 50% of the injuries are contactless, yeah, and also knowing that 91% of the players consider the pitch to be an injury risk place, yeah, they want to minimize the risk. They want to ensure their key assets, yeah, their players, which is the number one value of any club. And so what they do is they say, hey, we always need to have a good pitch. We can't have a pitch with varying hardnesses or varying traction behavior, because what we want is a pitch which has equal behavior so that we minimize the risk of injuries of our players.
The assets. Yeah. Have you seen insurance company coming at you or talking with different clubs? Because it's obviously one of the big, as part of a P&L. I mean, it's like you've mentioned, player salary and transfer fees and all that. It's equals more than 70% usually of the total revenues. So it's the number one assets they have. So I guess if you are talking to a CFO and knowing the money they spend on insurance companies and
Indeed. Yeah. No. The figures are shocking, right? I mean, it's a lot of money which is being spent. I mean, I think alone, there's a study which analyzes how much injury costs are per Premier League club between 2013 and 2017. And they calculated that the annual costs for injured players, or annual losses for injured players, to quote it correctly, are £45 million per club per season. Okay, in the Premier League. So there's £45 million being spent, and that calculation did not include the decrease in value of transfers of these players, right? So, I mean,
and the potential loss that you have from losing a game, and so not making it to a certain level, and so having some bonus fee or like a success fee on reaching certain competitions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, when Eden Hazard went to Real Madrid, I think he was worth 100 million. Then he got injured. After the injury, he was worth 60. And the questions which obviously come up then is, why don't you look at the players from this perspective? And what's interesting is, because you mentioned back to the point on the insurance, we are actually in touch, and we are now running a research program with the German insurance. It's called Verband Berufsgenossenschaft. And all the footballers in Germany are under one public insurance. And they literally get the data of every injury which happens during a game and in the training. And we're going to compare that data from the injuries that happen on game weekends with the subjective valuation of the pitch quality, which is given out for the Pitch of the Year award in Germany in the Bundesliga. And I think this will be a very interesting study or research to do, because I think the insights have value for literally also any other football league, in Europe particularly. And the VBG, so the Verband Berufsgenossenschaft, the German insurance, they actually do finance for the football clubs certain initiatives that prove to reduce the injury risk. Yeah, and so for us, that is obviously a very interesting approach.
Yeah, but well, you're talking like in Germany. I mean, I know this summer we have a big European tournament, the Euro being played in Germany, and I was like, hearing about it is like, I see it from what you've explained at the beginning. Okay, you see for the groundsman at a club level, the groundsman with the sports performance team, and how actually it's more than just a tool for daily operations for groundsman. Okay, it starts with this, but at the end of the day, it can have medical issues, tactics. It can have impact on the P&L if a player get injured, or it plays a huge role on the sporting side. But I was thinking it's what you've just mentioned is also at the end of the day, like if you want the Euro or any kind of competitions being played on different pitches. You could be a league or a competition organizer and say, okay, I want this minimum standard. I want this data to be live. You can go to your broadcasters behind it and say, like, look, the quality of the pitch were there because we've invested into different tools to allow us for that. And if the pitch are this quality, we know the ball speed, we know the bound, we know the game that you will see live on the broadcast, wherever that is, will be like more passionate, more engaging, more speed. So I'm thinking actually it's way beyond the club or the sports performance team. It can go very much broader than this, actually.
You're talking about the reality also already in part. And so, I mean, yes, it's about protecting players, but then there's this aspect of, let's say, having the pitch to ensure high quality football. Yeah. So there are standards and rule books which have come up, and this whole narrative or whole story around it is, well, we need to increase the level of the game. I mean, if you go back 20 years and you look at football grounds, if you look at the Champions League final where John Terry slipped because they had an artificial turf pitch in the Moscow stadium, laid a natural turf pitch over it, and were surprised, that when it rained, there was no proper drainage for the natural turf with an artificial turf underneath. Well, surprise. Nobody talked to a groundsman, probably. Somebody took a quick decision. And players slipped. And if you ask John Terry, he will not be happy about that having happened. And so we decided to come up with rule books, right, to standardize and level the playing field. So for me, it's not only about the thing of protecting players, and of course, ensuring highest optimal entertainment. But the third thing is also about fairness. I think it's about the fairness and leveling the playing field. And making it equal, because particularly if we know that players in their youth can get injured, and their careers can end because maybe they've played on a bad pitch or on a
too
pitch
hard,
which has
too soft,
varying conditions, and they get an ACL injury or they get a hamstring injury, then I think it's also about really taking a broader perspective as the entire sport and saying, we want to ensure and make sure that the pitches are at the highest possible quality, to be able that everyone can play this game and that this game is beautiful, essentially for everyone. And
I was wondering if,
No, that's exactly with the tournaments what you mean, when we play international. And for example, we had games now happening in all over the world, whether it's the Asian Cup, which was happening in Qatar, whether it's the Euro Cup, which is going to happen in Germany now in summer, or whether it's African Cup, which happened now in Ghana. What you want to make sure of is you want to have equal high quality playing field, so that if Messi plays in the MLS, he knows that he doesn't get injured because he's playing on an artificial turf pitch.
Yeah. But I was also thinking more, well, it's like, I know you guys are working with La Liga. So I was like, this is also not necessarily like, obviously, like if Messi is playing in Saudi Arabia, you want to make sure he's not getting injured, or if there's any kind of international friendlies with Argentina delegation being everywhere in the world during the international match window. Okay, I see it. But I'm also thinking like equity or fairness in terms of, and even if I'm La Liga, it's like, if you know certain pitches are rubbish to a certain extent at specific time of the year, like in January or February, because
difficult
it rains a lot in the north, or whether it's very dry because the south or whatever during like
essentially lack of light in winter times always,
or lack of lights, or like if you could even integrate that in terms of how you met your match calendar, or trying to put an algorithm to a certain extent to say, okay, I'm also not making it unfair at the same time, because you don't want to say, okay, we choose this pitch always when it's the best condition so that it helps certain teams or whatever, but just making sure as part of the algorithm in terms of when you do the match calendar for the whole season, like also you consider the pitch quality for the quality of the game, for the protection of the players, and potentially there are some areas for which you are less likely to go to at certain stages, because out of 5 years, the data you've collected shows that the risk of injury is 90% above everything else, or the quality of the ball speed or whatever the game is 70% less than the other one. So I was thinking of of that for national, like with La Liga or stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's happened already now, and actually, you took a real example. Yeah, so I mean, the Copa del Rey, which is played in Spain, yeah, which is basically a national championship. There were certain games which were supposed to happen in at the club in Madrid, yeah, but they couldn't play in their own stadium because the pitch wasn't in conditions, so they had to go and play in the stadium of Atletico Madrid. Yeah. Even though that was not their home stadium. Yeah. So, and that was already defined at that level. And now if you are a league, I think it very much goes into the point of you want to support, your clubs, right? And, if you want to support your clubs, yes, you set minimum standards, but maybe you just also provide them with the right tools. Yeah. And with the right infrastructure and with the right information. Yeah. And obviously, the more information you start collecting, yeah, the better you start the more and more you are able to model better the microclimate, yeah, and the better you're able to offer advice, yeah.
It's a bit like the Timbo model of the NBA.
Yeah, exactly. So if you take an example of La Liga, yeah, they have a person responsible for pitch quality who actually is adapted under the entertainment department, yeah. So Pedro Fernandez Bolaños, and Pedro is actually very knowledgeable, but Pedro cannot be in 20 places at the same time. Yeah. So how will Pedro be able to actually ensure quality if he doesn't have a digital tool? Well, his life is difficult. And if you can ask, I know him personally very well. You can ask him. He's traveling, and he's traveling a lot. Yeah. And he's going left, right, and center and trying to help everyone out. Yeah. But even him, with all of the knowledge and all of his experience, he has difficulties in communicating and explaining these issues to people who are maybe not so related to the department, which is from the sporting area, from the medical area, yeah, as well as, of course, from the entertainment side. Yeah. So I think it's very important as a league as a whole to provide this information infrastructure, the support, because at the same time as a league, you are making sure that your clubs save water, save energy, right? You become actually sustainable. You're more sustainable in the maintenance. You're more sustainable in the entire management of your core assets, your players. And thirdly, you're making sure that there won't be any games that are canceled, and that you can actually fill up the game calendar with all these games which you're doing, because there's more and more games happening, but they're all happening on the same surface. So you ought to really know a lot about that surface.
Yeah. Actually, I like, we did that. I mean, you mentioned it at the beginning, like the sustainability plan stuff, but I know you were at Spobis recently, and World Football Summit with or even with Southampton, when you went, and I think it was a big part of, it's also something which is, obviously we all have to play a role with sustainability, because we all understand and acknowledge that we need to drive change within every sector, including sports and football. But at the same time, it's also something for which you can come and say, it's also in your interest, because actually I'm saving you cost on water when you see the rise on the energy, and you can tell them, like, thanks to the data, I know exactly how you can best perform or have the best pitch conditions and level of quality without overspending on irrigation or whatever. So I think it's also like
it was never easier to convince the football clubs to be sustainable. Yeah. I mean, I'm not asking them to put vegan sausages, yeah, or to change their providers of, I don't know, seating, yeah, options. But what we're literally offering is the most rational sustainability case ever, which is reduce your costs and reduce your emissions, basically, at the same time. And you will be saving water, you save fertilizer, yeah, and you just make sure to make the things data-driven, with the end result of having a more uniform pitch, yeah, that reduces the injury risk of something which is even more important to you, meaning your players. Yeah? And it's not only your core star players, it's all your pitches every day. Yeah, I mean, you're having literally right now, the pitch, yeah, in itself, it's 8-10 pitches. Yeah, you're watering them every day. You're putting fertilizer on them every other week. You're basically trying to take care of them as good as possible. And if you start having data and you can do it even better and you reduce costs, it's like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think from what I hear from you, it's just like when you think about pitch and like groundsman and stuff like that, it's kind of what you were mentioning, like sometimes you outsource and it's just a company doing it and that's it. While here, what you guys doing is just like, it's a data play. So everything comes back to data. So we know in terms of commercial applications. So the fan data is key in terms of how you leverage those, the eyeball, every valuation on the sponsorship, licensing, or even the podcasters are based on that. And so here it's the same. It's a full data play that can help the leagues, whatever rights holders, competition organizers, federations to raise the level playing field, but also like reduce injuries. What I was thinking of is, okay, you have the data, you pull that off. Everybody today is talking about AI and kind of machine learning. What from yours, because you are actually a SaaS platform, you are a data platform.
Yeah,
you are just a data platform. So how do you see this future? How AI is playing a role? Is it for predictive analysis? Is it like kind of the smartness that you were mentioning at the beginning? Where does it impact you in your company?
I think the real potential comes out over time, which can be starting from reinforced learning, for example, right? So we now have certain predictive models for turf diseases, but then if I know how your weather was, what kind of maintenance activity you did, and then you have another disease appearing, I'll be able to improve all these predictive models. And slowly but surely, the predictive models will get better and better and better with every time that I know what kind of reasons have caused this disease to appear. Now, the same will be if we're looking at what maintenance affects, for example, drainage, or how do you make sure that the pitch is most uniform, right? And so later you can go into things like making sure that using this data, not only, of course, to improve that part, but actually comparing it to the energy usage of the players. So acute chronic workload ratio. If you want to calculate that better and you know the pitch conditions, that's one thing. If you add to that model the player movement and movement patterns, you're getting into another thing. And so potentially at some point you'll be able to tell a player before a game, hey, you should be wearing these shoes, and you could be recommending a coach, hey, under these conditions with a pitch which allows you a top speed of X and a ball roll speed of Y, you should be playing this tactic, and these players. And this is
it's like a companion, like it's a optional companion. Like think about it, because we know XYZ data is telling us the speed, the way it can be played, and we know your strengths, and this would be the recommendation.
Yeah, and we know how tired a player might be still, and we know how intense this weather will be for him,
Okay.
I mean, many variables come into play.
It's super granular. It can become super granular for sports performance.
Of course, I mean, we are providing one part of the story, We'll never be the full provider. We're going to provide you everything around the pitch and the weather and the climate and the movement on the pitch.
No, but if you are a sporting director or something like that, it can be super powerful for the head coach and the whole team in terms of adding on another layer of data that you can have for your decisions.
Yeah, and just a simple example. Where am I going to train today? Yeah. Can I train on a pitch that will be more or less
pitch
like
number 18, not the number 21?
Exactly. Well, I'll go to pitch 18 because I know that pitch 18 is very similar to the one that we're playing against on the weekend. Perfect. And if not, I even have the groundsman prepare pitch 18 in a way that is similar. Yeah. Now, right now, nobody's doing that, but that can be an added value. Yeah. And if you wonder if it can be an added value, look at any national championship game, where you have these 4th to 5th league clubs playing against the 1st league club. And by chance, the 1st league club is always having major difficulties. Well, why is that so? Because they're not accustomed to playing on a pitch like that anymore. Yeah,
like a shitty pitch.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a shitty, but it just might be a pitch with very long grass and very deep and very soft, with a natural soil. So the conditions will be different. Yeah, the ball won't roll as quick. You can forget your passing game, and it will affect your entire strategy for the day.
Yeah, I've never thought about it, like the leagues or the national championship where you play like a 4th or 5th division clubs and struggling.
Oh, well, it's not only a case there. I mean, there's cases where I remember that was one presentation I saw from Pedro from La Liga, who was explaining the chances that by chance when teams in the Spanish league played against some of the top 3 candidates, which always tend to win the Spanish National League, La Liga. The grass was pretty long and the ground was very soft. By chance, always on that day. Yeah. And the statistical significance from the measurements he had taken were clearly indicating a pattern. Yeah. Now, you can obviously doubt whether it's correlation or causality, but fact is, the pitch was different. The pitch is part of the game. Yeah. There's margins which you can play with between 25 millimeters, 30 millimeters. Yeah. Hardness levels are also defined. Yeah. And there also is a range. So if there is already a range, somebody's already using it. Yeah.
Can give you a competitive edge for sure.
Oh, certainly so.
Chris, I know I'm looking at the time a little bit. I wanted to ask you 1 or 2 other questions also when we wrap up, but 2024, how does it look like? How do you envision it? I mean, we're already in Feb. I know it's already like nothing compared to what the UN weeks could be or something like that when you have a company, but okay, what kind of targets you have, specific developments? I know you've good use cases or good successes already in 2024, but how does 2024 look like for you?
I would say primary now for the first half of 2024, we are focusing on improving and adding more features to the software based on what groundsmen tell us. So we're currently testing the software with groundsmen in all the 5 big leagues of Europe. Yeah. And the idea is learn from them and improve, add features, come up with new ideas. Yeah. And particularly based on the feedback. So that is very engaging. That's an active time for us because we're working with a selected amount of clubs and really trying to improve. And then from July onwards, I believe there will be a strong push towards offering also a solution to a broader range of clubs, which is already valid. Yeah. With a better, let's say, with in-depth customer support, which covers a lot of new topics, a lot of innovations, and particularly also then offering them a hardware tool which allows them to scan the surface and really bring in this AI potential. Because one hand is you have a good software with predictive models, but the other thing is if this predictive model gets a learning curve through a sensor that scans the surface every day, potentially, then you really get the most out of the AI potential. And I really think that that's what at least the pro clubs and the pro leagues seek, yeah, to protect their players, to ensure that they have a winning edge, yeah, and to be sustainable and reduce their costs.
Yeah. And so the scanner is like kind of like when you are cutting the grass, or I don't know the name of the machine, is like your rover. And so you have that and that scan the entire pitch and you add it to the other data.
It's a non-invasive measurement of the surface. Yeah. So current tools are all invasive. They're point measurements, seem to carry on the pitch. Takes a lot of time of groundsmen. And, as it takes a lot of time, you can imagine that as they have already a busy life, this doesn't happen every day. But if you integrate it into their daily activities, which is, for example, cutting the grass, then you really can get a full view at the pitch. And that's what we offer. That is a technology we worked on over the past 3 years. And we're very much looking forward to bringing that to market, together with a software that makes your life easier every day and is key. Yeah. And allows you to integrate your irrigation system, your undersoil heating system, and further things.
So improving the product until this summer, like perfecting it, and then after pushing it. Okay.
Understood. Yeah. And a few R&D projects, as mentioned with the insurance angle, but also trying to get, players' opinion in. I would say coaches in to really learn how to create something which is also value for them. But one step at a time.
Yeah. With the performance side and with the actors of this game. Okay. Understood. And, the last one I wanted to ask you is, how do you see, I mean, I am maybe like, imagine I'm 5 years old. Like, what's the next key trends like in turf management, or what are the significant advancements, or what's going on in this world in 2024, maybe 2025, but what's changing? Tough one, no?
So, yeah, no, a tough one. I mean, if you look at it, obviously I would say software, but that's my take on it and data. I would say big trends which are affecting the entire industry is basically, the complete lack of, fungicides and pesticides that will still be allowed. Yeah. From an environmental regulation perspective, the difficulty in managing your resources. We're facing more and more extreme climate patterns. Yeah. Just look at the amount of games that were canceled throughout Europe this year. It's increasing, and it has to do with more extreme and varying climates. And kind of these two things, to try to be on the one hand more sustainable, meaning less chemical usage, and on the other hand also managing extreme weather patterns. Those will be trends that I think will follow us and the turf industry for the next decade, and will be key to resolve them. And I think it will be key to have an adaptive strategy, because there's no one size fits all here, but it will have to be key to understand what is happening and how can I react to it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I like it. Last question for me, like we usually have that one for our guests on the podcast, is any recommendation from a book, series, a movie, or something maybe you've read on a red eye plane or whatever during vacation, or something that inspired you that you loved, or any recommendation for our listeners?
Let me come up with
the Groundsman 2.0, or
no, I mean there's enough things about the football industry, of course, which anyone can I think can think about. There's an article that I think we could share that would be very nice. And it's a bit evolving and explaining the history of the real role of the pitch. It's actually from the UEFA. I actually very much enjoyed that one. It's short, but it's nice because it showed how there has been this trend in really improving and what kind of a role the pitch has been playing for centuries. And if there's a book which I ought to share, there's a book which tells the life story of the first person which built the first seat banks. And let me quickly try to remember his name. I think it's a Russian name, so it's Nikolai. I will come up with it later.
Don't worry, we'll find it out.
But it's an impressive story because he between the First and Second World War, he started building up the first seed banks in the world. And he collected seeds from all over the world, literally traveled everywhere, to the origins of grains like rice, and wheat. And he collected all these seeds and he was stored them in St. Petersburg. And when St. Petersburg was occupied by Nazi Germany forces, the scientists decided to lock themselves into the building, and not eat the seeds, but actually stayed there. And I found it impressive, the fact that the commitment to science and to seeds, which were collected back in the days, because many of these seeds are nowadays in the global seed vault. And allow us that when we have droughts and climate change issues, to actually order there and get these seeds and grow food again in places where else there would be no food. So it's actually about the first seed banks, and it's a very impressive book. Very much enjoyed it.
I like it. I mean, it's the first time I have like a recommendation which is non-sport, non-football. So kind of.
I thought let's be a bit out of the box, but I'll find the name of the author and send you the book over later.
It's perfect. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for the time.
Thanks a lot,
for sharing all of that. Obviously we'll be in touch because we do work together. So that's perfect.
Absolute pleasure, yes, indeed.
Thanks for the podcast. We'll be sharing different links. We'll be sharing maybe the articles and everything from there, but thank you, and let's be in touch.
Thank you too. Yeah, same here, and take good care.
Cheers.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We hope you enjoy it as much as we love creating them. If you like the episode, feel free to comment, rate, and share with people around you. You can visit our website, www.lastsource.io, to learn more about our activities. You will discover a wide range of articles and can subscribe to our newsletter to receive the latest tech and sports news in your mailbox every month. Stay tuned for new episodes.
Le corner.